Hey guys, Caesar here. I've spent decades discipling and developing leaders. And while there was certainly fruit and multiplication, for years it seemed that the amount of effort I was putting into training up leaders wasn't yielding a proportionate harvest. Have you ever felt this way? In my earliest experiences with starting missional communities and planting churches, I learned, along with others, that we had to keep our eye on the prize of ongoing leadership development. It had to remain a high priority. We equipped everyone in community, and we equipped everyone the same way as we tried to raise up a new crop of leaders. And we learned the hard way that not everyone was willing or able to lead, and certainly not in the same ways, different personalities, different people. Instead of trying to raise a crop, we needed to shift our metaphor and our focus to finding the yeast that could be worked into and affect the entire lump of a doughy community. Now, what do I mean by that? This should not really come as such a revelation to us, because Jesus himself taught just such a thing to his own disciples. In Matthew 13, in nearly back-to-back parables, he contrasts the difference between growing crops, right, with the parable of the sower, and the effect of yeast in baking bread and how these apply to kingdom principles for growth. In this second parable, Jesus tells us that just a little yeast can change everything and lead to a great expansion of the community, or should I say dough. He shifts kind of midstream with his parables from the perspective of raising crops, where the result is a mixed one, right? One of 4 seeds yield great results. He shifts to that of using yeast, which permeates an entire loaf of bread, completely changing it, blowing it up. As we apply this to leadership development, I believe it means that it's possible, okay, for us to apply a common one-size-fits-all approach, trying to raise a crop of leaders, but rarely getting the same fruitfulness out of each person. But by contrast, if you look for the yeasty people, those who are ready for growth and will in turn lead others to maturity along with them, it produces a far greater result in the long run. And I can tell you, it is a pleasure giving time and energy to those who desire to be equipped to lead. It's much easier than trying to develop folks who are not that interested or ready or positioned for growth in their life. One is a blessing, and the other always feels like heavy lifting. When we tried the one-size-fits-all approach to leadership development, it looked like this. Okay? See, some folks were actually leaning in more, and they were maturing at a faster rate. They were the taller shoots, while some folks, despite our best efforts, were a little farther behind or less motivated. They just weren't growing as fast. So what we most commonly did was sort of give the entire crop a haircut, so to speak, right, down to the pace of the slowest growing shoots. We thought things like, well, we don't want to offend anyone or leave anyone behind. Don't push too hard. But then we noticed a couple things. Now we weren't really growing or multiplying at a very good rate, right? Because we're moving at the slowest people's speed. And more importantly, we were starting to lose those faster growing leaders who began to ask, is this all there is? I thought we were going to transform our city together. And often we'd lose them altogether and be left with really the least healthy, lowest capacity folks. And we're trying to build multiplication with that. Very slow. Remember, those fastest growing shoots, they're a pleasure to lead and develop. Give them all your time. Give them your best energies. They do everything you ask, and they're always ready for more. They're sponges who can grow fast, and they can be counted on. They're a lot of fun to be with and pour your life into. Jesus gave the bulk of his time to just a dozen men. He developed and discipled them in such a way that he could see them in action, answer their questions, and do life together. That's why it was only a handful. And then he sent his maturing yeast out to affect and transform the world. We get to do the same thing. The next best time to begin investing deeply into those faithful disciples who will act as yeast in the dough of your community is now. Give them your best time and watch the results. Here's a question. How have you seen your leadership development multiplied by applying Jesus' yeast in the dough strategy? Or how have you not? Leave me your thoughts or questions below. And would you please subscribe to this YouTube channel before you head out today? As always, thanks for watching.